Give us an insight, if you would, into what the U.S. policy is toward these North Korean negotiations. Over the weekend, we heard Mr. John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, be pretty tough on what the North Koreans had to do and irrevocably do before progress would be made, and drawing a parallel with Libya. Now we've got a response from Kim Dae-gwan over in North Korea says that's not going to work, and the White House seems to be backpedaling. Is that fair?
Well, let's kind of put this into an overall perspective. Technically, we're still at war in Korea. About 7 decades ago, the war began, and there's a temporary ceasefire that has more or less kept peace over that subsequent 1952-53 time frame. It'd be nice if we could have some kind of treaty with North Korea and South Korea that would formally end that war or conflict between those two nations. And then long term, what I hope that we'll see out of this in the context of nothing ventured, nothing gained, is the elimination of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction on the Korean Peninsula by all sides. Perhaps a unification of the Korean peoples into one country, and perhaps the ability of the United States to withdraw our troops from the Korean Peninsula. Now, those are lofty goals. It might take years or decades for us to be able to achieve them, but anything now that moves us in that direction is a positive. And keep in mind, too, you've got North Korea. They're somewhat mercurial. I don't know if President Trump's going to be able to achieve results that 7 decades of past presidents have not been able to achieve, but it's worth the effort. Yeah,
somewhat mercurial, maybe an understatement. I think it comes when it comes to North Korea. But how do we take those steps forward? Because now what we're hearing most recently on North Korea is they won't even talk with the South Koreans right now and may not meet with President Trump if we don't cancel those joint military exercises. Do you favor that?
Well, I don't know enough about the details of the joint military exercises and whether a cancellation of them would actually result in constructive negotiations with North Korea. If we knew that the cancellation of these military exercises would cause North Korea to be more open, to be more negotiating with respect to the major goals that I'd like to see us accomplish long term on the Korean Peninsula, then sure, we ought to cancel them.
Wouldn't
but that's
that
a judgment call that the president is going.
South Korea alliance, though?
Well, let me finish my sentence. That is a judgment call that the President of the United States is going to have to make, whether the cancellation of these military exercises will in fact result in a better long-term outcome. If not, well, then the president should continue with these military exercises with the South Koreans, and then we'll see how it plays out.
At the same time, talking long term, the Vice Foreign Minister Kim Dae-gwan saying that the U.S. has to accept North Korea as a nuclear power. So is it worth going through with the summit that legitimizes this regime when they want to be accepted as a nuclear power?
Well, that's going to be one of the thorny issues that the president, the South Koreans, and the North Koreans are going to have to work their way through. Quite frankly, while you have to be cognizant of the threats, of the boisterousness and the threatened use of nuclear weapons sometime against South Korea, perhaps Japan, certainly the United States of America, I'm one of those who believes that North Korea tends to act irrationally, but their leaders are in fact rational, which means that the mutually assured destruction doctrine that has kept the United States and the Soviet Union, now Russia, the United States and China at peace, I believe the mutually assured destruction doctrine will also work with North Korea, such that they will not dare launch nuclear weapons against us or our allies because they know doing so is suicidal, that they will die.
Congressman, I want to turn to the other part of your oversight responsibilities I referred to, and that's Iran right now. As the European leaders are meeting over in Sofia, Bulgaria, they're making increasingly hostile noises about our imposing sanctions on European companies. They say they're with us in trying to curtail the missile activity and the terrorism, but we have to stick with the agreement. Are you concerned that the Europeans can take effective action to protect the European companies so that they are immune to the sanctions we want to impose?
Well, I'm comfortable with the United States acting in its own interest and the Europeans acting in their own interest, with the joint goal being to preserve peace. Now, I'm going to distinguish in a very big way Iran from North Korea. I'm confident that the mutually assured destruction doctrine works in North Korea because the North Korean government wants to stay alive. They don't want to die. I'm not confident that with the religious motivations that are so often expressed by the Iranian leadership that the mutually assured destruction doctrine works. I'm concerned that with respect to Iran, they might, in the name of Allah, in order to destroy the little Satan, Israel, and the great Satan, the United States, as the Iranians describe us, I'm concerned that they might be willing to commit a mass suicide in order to achieve the goals of Allah, which is the destruction of Israel and the United States of America. So I think with respect to Iran, we have to be much more aggressive, and we have to be cognizant of the public statements that suggest that they have suicidal tendencies. The mutually assured destruction doctrine will not work, in which case if Iran gets nuclear weapons and missile delivery systems, they're a much, much greater danger than the United States has faced in past years.